Right on. Well, let's get started, Chip, and then people can just kind of come in as we go.
Yeah.
So one thing I always just like to introduce you guys. I know we have 3 people here from the team. Just give us a little bit of background on your all self, and then if someone wants to do the deed of kind of explaining just a kind of entry level look on what the project is and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Sure. We'll do the run by that we usually go with these AMAs. I'll introduce myself and then my partners and a little bit of flair as well. But my name, my name is Wilton Prado. I'm fully doxxed, man. I go by Zeus in the professional esports world, and we are the founders of Flair MC. Right. I am the founder with my co-founders here, Rick and Battle. Flair MC is bringing professional esports to Web3 with a next generation lifestyle brand and esports organization for the people, with a focus on holder utility through our Mint Pass. What does that mean? Well, we are building the Real Madrid of esports. They are an amazing football team for people that watch soccer or football as it's called. They have fans that love and follow the team, but make no mistake about it, business is not in football for them. It's around sponsorships, celebrity athletes, influencers that surround the brand, and everything around them. It's around the fandom. And that is what major esports brands are becoming and have become. These are elite teams with lots of fans, and the business model is the brand, or at least for the ones that have success in scaling their brand. FaZe, as an example, just got valued at $1 billion through an IPO. So that's insane. And that's one organization in esports and entertainment, right? So if they are Barcelona, we are trying to build Real Madrid with a Web3 element to it, where the community can own, govern the team, the influencers, and take control of all parts of the organization and have lifestyle experiences with it. We have a team of 50 plus full-time people on this, over $250,000 invested. And I'm going to introduce my partners because we're going to get into how we can do this, but experience has a lot to do with it. And we complement each other very well. Which one of you wants to take it first?
Yeah, I'll take it. Hey guys, so my name's Rick, Ryan, Rye, whatever you prefer to call me. My original background is actually in investment banking, more specifically in ECM, so equity capital markets. So think IPOs, SPACs, follow-ons, you name it, I've probably touched it. And in the last 2 years, I've probably done upwards of $20 billion in transaction value. Originally got into crypto about a year ago, and then, went down the rabbit hole, fell in love with reading white papers and DeFi projects and looking at tokenomic structures, and kind of the rest is history in that regard. But when the transition to NFTs happened, a lot of similarities happened with NFT projects and what my current specialty in ECM is, which is biotech. So I think I have a really cool outlook on, how projects grow and stuff like that, and how market reacts to those kind of things. But I'll let Ankit go here.
Yeah. Hey guys, can you hear me fine? Sure.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So I have a very similar background to Ryan in that I come from an investing type background, traditional finance. I've been working in sort of the private equity industry for almost 8-9 years now, kind of various different funds, most recently at a $50 billion fund, probably invested in north of $4 billion in investments kind of across sort of different sorts of industries, basically very, very focused on like how do you build businesses and like how do you add like real sort of long-term value. And I just got into crypto about a year ago, kind of before that Bitcoin, ETH, but more seriously into DeFi and stuff, getting close to a year now. And basically just got very excited around what's possible with these new sort of tokenomic structures, this idea of community ownership and just giving stakes to people who are consumers or also investors. And just had a chance to meet with Wilton or Zeus and just learn a lot of what's going on in the esports industry, and it just seemed like a perfect fit for what we can do with crypto and sort of move this space forward. And I'm sure we'll kind of get into that a little bit in terms of what the synergies are. But just excited to be here and part of this project and and very excited to share kind of what we're trying to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. start, just to introduce myself, right? I talked a little bit, but as Anke mentioned, I go by Wilton or Zeus, fully doxed, but I'm called Zeus because I've spent most of my life and career in esports, more specifically CSGO. I've been playing for this for 22 years, but more predominantly over the last 8 years where I found fame, fortune, and everything coming from it, right? I'd like to say that I did pretty well for myself without sounding too cocky, but I won 13 world tournaments, went to 27 grand finals, 54 podiums, even won our World Cup twice. And not only did I do very well as a competitor, I was one of the first true coach managers in the industry. I revolutionized how it was done. And I helped build some of the largest organizations to touch esports, which are Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, MIBR, LG, SK Gaming. And we're talking about the most renowned brands for esports in the world in terms of viewership, in terms of fan base. And through that expertise, I gained the respect of not only my competitor friends, which I used to travel around the world with, just playing in these stadiums and competitions for esports, but also from sponsors, from influencers, from organization owners, and have a pretty good relationship with most, right? I got introduced into crypto in around 2016 to 17, just at first as a store of value, something very simple, but in 2020 went a lot down the rabbit hole, and I realized what was possible with NFTs and DeFi more specifically, which fascinated me, right? During my career, I helped raise 4 teams to the #1 position in the world, not only on the competition side, but also on the brand side, because these are brands at the end of the day, like I mentioned. And I saw the opportunity to do it for myself and for my community in a way that we could share, where we wouldn't just be eaten up by the traditional market, right? And that's kind of the overall premise here. Esports is billions and billions of dollars in viewership and everything that comes with it. I know how to navigate it very well. And with the Web3 elements to it, which we will get, I'm sure, a lot more down now in this AMA, we have a chance to do something truly unique, revolutionary, and at the end of the day, very fucking cool, if I may say so myself. So that's kind of how we find ourselves in these seats, man.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad to hear it. And again, I am someone who is not a competitive gamer whatsoever. Matter of fact, I might be the worst gamer in this entire chat right now. Even though I'm a huge collector of video games and stuff, I'm very bad at them. So it's awesome to be in the presence of literally a god, quote unquote. In the,
Thanks. No need for it.
So awesome. Just a quick question, but for the other two, Ryan, and sorry, I forget your name. But do you guys have backgrounds in esports at all? Have you guys won world championships or anything like that?
Yeah, bro. Absolutely not. No. My background. I'm more. I see myself out of the team, right? I'm kind of the bridge, right? Like Wilton is obviously like the full-on esports guy. I'm very familiar with it. I know like a lot of what happens. I know a lot of the players. Like I played a lot of League of Legends. I played some Counter-Strike. I played like everything at some point. I just have not been like, dedicating. I'm just shit, at the end of the day, right? So no world championships for me, unfortunately.
In Battle East? That's all right.
Awesome. Battle, you're muted.
But no, it's good. It's good to know that I'm not alone there. But no, I think esports is something.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm not very into gaming either. I think I played like Warcraft 3 and some stuff when I was younger. But yeah, this is a relatively new space for me, I should say.
I like Warcraft 3 as well. So in a little Defense of the Ancients, a little Dota mod in there. But
back in the OG Dota days, yes.
I'm with you, but that's great. No, I'm excited to see, again, very much so the breadth of background from everyone kind of culminating together to be like a Web3 project that is based in gaming. So what can you guys give us a little bit of detail? Obviously we kind of brush on the kind of surface level, but what's the difference between what you guys are doing versus, and I'll put it lightly, the Web3 integration that a group like FaZe has been doing? I know that they're very interested in crypto. Some would say too interested in crypto and NFTs. What is different about the way you guys are trying to establish the brand and establish this?
I can take this one. When we look at what FaZe or G2 or any other esports, or frankly any other like Web 2 oriented company is doing in Web 3, I think we can all agree it's just a bunch of cash grabs. There's nothing really of value being delivered. They don't really understand the whole premise is like community first. That's kind of what keeps the clock ticking in Web 3. So for us, like we think it's interesting that they're doing it. It's interesting that, when we look at their investor deck for their recent SPAC IPO, it says Web3, metaverse stuff. And I'm like, what do you actually mean by that? Right. For us, what it is I'll just put this like in the most basic terms. When you look at what kind of generates revenue in these more traditional esports models in Web 2, it's all about sponsorships. It's all about branding. And sponsors care mostly about how engaged your community is, right? And it just so happens that in esports, the primary people in esports are streamers who stream 10 to 12 hours a day, every day, talk to their communities all day. When they press go live, tens of thousands of people can start watching them and interacting with them on a daily basis, right? Their interactivity that they have with their community is unlike no other, right? And if you look similarly to esports teams, like they're always on Twitter, they're always on social media, they have Discords, like they're very well integrated with their communities. Well, from our perspective, Web3 is an amplification of that, right? Like there's nothing more powerful in terms of a community engagement than people in Web3, because you're all incentivized together. No one has shared interests like you do in Web3 otherwise. So for us, it's a way to build the community and frankly, to become even more attractive for future sponsors. And we can get into why that's great for investors and why that's great for the rest of the people who might be interested in this project. But at the end of the day, it's just so that we can have an even better community.
Well, I would
add yours, Battle. I'll go for the esports side later.
Yeah, so I would only add, right, is a lot of their cap structure is already set, right, from a standpoint of FaZe Clan. And I think what Ryan mentioned is pretty key, that they just see this as another sort of revenue stream, which is true in a way. These NFTs or whatever that your community gives you, it is revenue to the community. But really what it is, what really should matter in the medium to long term, right, is like what type of utility and value are you adding to these sort of, whether we call it our MIT pass or like certain NFTs or whatnot, right? To the community that makes it worth something, right? And that's kind of a part that I think is really kind of missing in these people. So, I mean, I can talk a little bit about the utilities of our Mint Pass and like how we think about it. And that's just very different from like the cash grab version. So the way that we sort of approached kind of the utilities of this Mint Pass is we really took like a short, medium, and long-term vision around how do you really add value, and what that means is really like from a floor price standpoint, how does it improve or impact the floor price? Both in like the store of value way, which is hype generation, and then in the more traditional, where you go to traditional finance, like underwriting cash flow type way, right? Which is the future value stream of cash flows to basically what you get paid out, right? Because I always like to say in a way that we talk about permission versus permissionless. Permissionless store of value is basically cash flow, right? If I know that I'm getting $10,000 every year, I can value that to what I should value it today. And so for us, like in the short term, right, we have a few different utilities. On the crypto side, we have this 3D fully rigged 700 plus trait gaming anime inspired avatar collection that's basically going to be a free claim to all of our pass holders. That collection's already done. It's portable to any sort of metaverse. It has its own utilities tied to it. And that's going to be dropped basically within weeks of basically the Mint Pass going live. That's just on the crypto side. More like medium term on the crypto side is like things like governance tokens or whatnot to help say, hey, like what players should we be buying? What sort of jerseys should look like? Things like that, right? On the short term, on the esports side, we've already been talking to, and Wilton has really been doing this, to kind of teams, players, super influencers, people with 1 million+ followers, telling them about this idea and we basically a trigger ready to pull on a team or even like a few that we've been in conversations with the moment after mint and any sort of incremental kind of VC type funding that we do to launch this. And what that will do is basically pull a lot of eyes into this project. Right, the way that we see this happening in terms of the Web3 transition in esports, it's not going to be the way that FaZe does it, where they just try to sell NFTs to their base, right, without any sort of a true utility or whatnot. The way we see it happening is that we onboard like a top tier team, and Wilton, as he's kind of mentioned, has coached and taken these to number one in the world for every single organization. Basically every organization he's worked for the last 7 years. But that basically draws a lot of eyes from Web 2 into Web 3. And you excite them with this Web 3 model, what we're doing. You say, hey, you're really excited. Well, the only way that you have access to all these additional utilities, which is our players, our experiences, or whatnot, is through like this additional pass, right? And so for us, we see that as an actual true hype generation way of increasing value for the floor price in the short to medium term, right? Medium term wise, we also are building this lifestyle brand. We have the merch already developed through famous Brazilian artists. That's going to be available. But the more interesting thing model, a little bit more of an innovation, I think, is we mentioned that this is a Web 2 functioning model, and that exists outside of this idea of Web 3 ownership. But as an example, right, like there's a $210 million sponsorship deal that FTX, the crypto exchange, did, 10-year deal for naming rights for TSMC, which is an esports organization. That's $21 million a year, the name sponsor, but that's one sponsor, right? What we can do for our mint passes is basically say, hey, like, let's say we get a $5 million sponsorship from someone. We can take like 10% of that or 20% of that and decide to sweep the floor, right? That's sort of outside revenue that's already existing in the Web 2 model that we are now pushing back to kind of our mint pass holders, right? As sort of, we call them our early investors, whatever you want to call, right? That's sort of a more medium term. And then a more long-term way to view this, right? We view our holders as sort of our seed investors in a way, right? Because you guys are, whoever chooses to invest in us, basically our initial investors. And what that means is that you should have the upside if there's some sort of a crazy exit. And we've talked about exits that have already existed in this industry, right? FaZe IPOing at $1 billion, 100 Thieves at $500 million, Liquids, I think, at $400 million, G3s somewhere in the $200 to $300 million range. And this esports industry is growing at a 20 to 30% CAGR a year. I think it's at $2 billion revenue now, and it's expected to be at $5 billion in 2030. And if we have some sort of an exit event, we think that our mint pass holders should have a piece of that as well, right? And that's where like it gets exciting for me, because that's where the real long-term returns are made, right? Is very much so in when you 10, 50, 100x the VC investment type thing, right? And so for us, like we really view this as sort of a mixture of things that have already been done in crypto, but really where we think crypto should be going, where NFT should be going, and adding utility that's both store of value from hype generation through influencers and things that already exist, but also cash flow based store of values to the floor price. And so we're really thinking about it from that standpoint. How can we like get our community value in the short, medium, long term, which is very different and a long-winded way of saying like that's not how most of these traditional Web2 companies think of NFTs and their communities.
Yeah, I think my partners did a really good job of explaining some of the ways that we are viewing utility and revenue generation. To answer your initial question, and my point of view, what are we doing different than the FaZe? These aren't native to the Web3 space. One of the first things that you need to do is situate yourself and understand what's going on. And as my partners alluded, they try to see it as a cash grab, where it's a way to shove down, sell points basically to their consumers or already existing fan bases. We use it as a way to reward ours and our early investors and our early supporters, not only financially, but also with some cool life experiences. But more importantly to me is we actually understand the space. So we did that by surrounding ourselves with great people. So if you look at our advisor list, we have the 3 founders of Apeless with us, with Jay, Dutch, and Caesar, right? We have Mr. H in Web3 Consulting, which guarantees efficient contracts, guarantees that it's a smooth mint. We understand what the space is and what it's lacking. We have Ollie from Zooverse, who does an amazing work with charity and theming and things like that. Scar, who does amazing collabs, finds us people to go with. Snack, who has part of Bridge 3 and just helps set all of this up even. And with these people that have been in the space that help guide us through these waters, it not only validates us, but also puts a lot of experience that people have lived through so that we don't go down the same paths and mistakes. And for us, like, we can't view this as a cash grab. Just look at where the market is right now. We are building and investing cash, like rivers of money into this, and having people go down that route with us during this bear market right now, which is awful. But because fundamentally, we believe in the technology and we believe that this is a way to bring our community and the experiences closer to the fans than ever were possible. So the example I always like to give is these organizations at 400, 500 million, $1 billion, they are amazing. There's no way we can't say they are, but they are like dogs on racetracks with those cones over their head. They're already doing so well, they can only see forward. They don't see what's going on the side and what can be done. So maybe you're a dog at the racetrack, but pretty soon a rocket comes by because you didn't look back and see that someone was building those during this entire time. Sorry, even ran out of breath there. But yeah, that kind of sums up my point.
Right. And I think to say, why would this be superior to the Web2 model, right? And I think the answer to that question is something that we sort of understand in NFTs, is that when you have like a true community like a true sort of community governed, and the way I use governed is, sure, there's like a voting, whatever part of it, but more importantly, like when you have something where you feel like the community is giving and getting back, we think that leads to a much, much higher value consumer than what the FaZe fans see, or like any of those Web2 type models do, to both the sponsors, to the advertisers, to the community, to whatever, because they're just a lot more active. They're just a lot more incentivized to kind of be part of and be interact with the brand, right? And we think that that's going to be, and for us, like, it just makes so much logical sense that esports is one of the first ones that you kind of take this next step where you bridge the Web2 to Web3, just because the demographic, the people are very, very similar in their mindsets. So a little bit tech forward, they're on their computers, they're on Discord, they're on gaming, whatnot. A lot of crypto people came from gaming, right? So the bridge is like pretty set here. It's just kind of doing it in the right way, in the Web3 native way, we think.
Awesome. And I think, and this is kind of at least my next question, but just to kind of pepper in a little bit of detail, we're seeing this with sports too, like not just esports. We have the fan controlled football league that people are seeing as well, where again, holders of a particular NFT for the team get certain kind of benefits and voting rights and things like that. What kind of advantages do you guys see esports having over traditional sports? Moving into this kind of model, or this kind of fan controlled kind of model there.
So I think you definitely make an interesting point, or bring up an interesting question, right? If we even take it to WAGMI United, right? We have in crypto someone that's trying to get into the Premier League of soccer or football, wherever you're in the world. The difference is for esports. One, as Battle was mentioning, our fan base from esports is the closest thing. I like to call them Web 2.5. They are so close to Web 3, they just don't realize it, and there's a hesitancy there. But the mediums are the same. The general demographic is the same. The fandom is the same. The way that they interact and proximity is pretty much the same. What we do at Flare that's different is, one, we're not trying to make it into Premier League. We already start at a top level. We already compete for titles in these tournaments at the most prestigious events, just because esports is blown up, but you still pay pennies on the dollar with the correct insider that knows how to navigate and where to get the acquisition of players and influencers, compared to a traditional sport. So if FaZe is at $1 billion, if you're trying to build a Real Madrid, for example, the same comparison in tiers, it's surreal's amount of money, and it's still surreal in esports, don't get me wrong, but it's doable. It's still at a point where it's doable. So that's the difference. In terms of the experiences, the proximity is already there. So we are just converting that fandom that already exists and giving them palpable real life experiences that are tangible to them and already in their lifestyle. Since there are those, cross paths, right? And between esports consumer audience and what a Web3 enthusiast is, they share a lot of the same age and demographic and styles of life. So we target for these experiences and for this lifestyle one audience, we are inherently already reaching the other, and they're intertwined. And that's why we believe that, different than traditional sports that's getting outpaced 58% a year to esports, we can actually use esports to bring a lot more people into crypto and not the other way around. We want to bring, as we believe in the technology and we believe that we can bring this to proximity, we want to use the people that are already watching this sport and are already interacting with these players and with these celebrities. And once they find out that we are Web3, then they can see that, wow, there's a whole deeper level of interaction that I can have with this team and with this community of things that I love. And that's kind of like the overview approach that you should be seeing when looking at traditional esports to something more sports as a whole, right?
I would only.
I also think that there's a really big advantage to just, as Battle was like referring to earlier, there's a lot of overlap just intrinsically in the crypto markets with and Web3 versus the traditional sports markets and Web3, right? Like demographics are substantially older based when you look at like traditional sports viewership compared to those that watch esports. So it's a much easier transition. Battle, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the point that Zeus highlighted is pretty key, right? If you, I don't know, like Premier League or NFL or whatnot, right? The cheapest team, right? Or even if you were trying to even assemble a team, right? You can't even do that. I guess you can, but it's pretty hard. But you'd have to pay like high hundreds of millions, if not like $1 billion, to be able to buy that, or even to try to like to buy one of the spots in the league or whatnot, right? The closest in esports, like pulling the sum of the pieces together, it's like a magnitude below that level right now, and it's already exploded, but it's going to continue to explode, just given that all the sponsors and whatnot are seeing, and advertisers are seeing huge amounts more value on the dollar per click, the amount of engagement that they're getting through these influencers or whatnot, right? Than in any other sort of industry, right? Like in a Super Bowl ad, you might get 30 seconds, you might pay $1 million for it. You get a 30-second interaction to like 100 million people. Cool. Hopefully X% of them buy it. Or you could like get an interaction to literally like 22 million people who watch the CSGO final, right? Unique devices, who knows how many people that is. Plus or like the 80,000, 100,000 followers of this Twitch stream, people who log in daily to follow this person who they influence. And who do you think the more valuable customer is, right? To the advertiser, it's going to be the latter, right? Like in the dollars per click, but it's still a lot cheaper in that area. But that's going to change in the next X number of years. I don't know if it's 1 year or 5 years from now, but it's kind of unique that it's such a interesting time to be able to come in this space, and you can do it through sort of a community ownership where it's not just some sort of like a little tick in the box, right? Because you're not going to, let's face it, today, maybe 10 years from now, you'll raise $1 billion as a DAO to buy the Cowboys, or I don't know what the Cowboys are worth, but you're not doing that today, right? Or you're not even raising like $10 million or like $100 million or whatnot, in today. But for esports, you can actually have like some sort of a say and like have a little piece of that upside, like we're saying, in this early because of where it is in the industry. So we think it's pretty interesting time to be here. We think that if we're able to pull it off in the right way, then it'll be a good case study for other industries as well, which is what I think you need a lot in this sort of Web3 ecosystem, is actual case studies of long-lasting revenue-generating entities that also very logically, when you have a fandom-based type of, I guess base is the best way to put it, that's kind of the most Web3 native, at least NFT native, I don't know Web3 native, but like NFT native in the way that we know them, synergy out there.
And just for clarification, the Dallas Cowboys are worth $8 billion. They are the largest valued sports franchise in the world. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I knew that off the top of my head. Okay, hey, no peanut gallery. Don't unmute yourself to talk. I never give you permission. No, that's awesome. No, I love that honest feedback. And again, it sounds like you guys have very clearly thought about things like this. So also forgive my dogs. I never get to host one of these things without my dogs sneaking in a bark or two. So apologies there.
Don't worry. Just on the Dallas Cowboy things, the Dallas Cowboys, they are visionaries. They already bought an esports team in Complexity, and their organization is worth probably close to $300 to $400 million. Just the esports side of Complexity as well. They're already in this.
That's crazy. So you're already seeing traditional sports kind of put their roots in the ground in terms of esports industry. That's
100%. 100%. You have David Beckham investing, Dallas Cowboy investing, Golden State Warriors investing. Liquid is owned by Axiomatic, which is the Dodgers by Peter Gruber and things like that. Most of traditional sports have already gotten invested into crypto as they see that they of course see the numbers more than most. I know there are a lot of still traditional sports fans out there, but the outpacing is real, right? And while 7 years ago my salary was, let's say, $1,000, well, towards the last part, it was closer to $100,000 a month. And that's how not only the traditional teams are seeing sponsors, they're seeing where they're investing the money. And year over year, esports has been growing. So Dallas Cowboys, everything, they're getting pieces of where they can. But one thing that has happened in the market from experience is it's not only about having money, it's about actually knowing how to navigate and being in there. You had Rick Fox open up Echo Fox. Even early on, he was one of the visionaries, but coming from a traditional sports side, he didn't know how to navigate, and he got basically booted out of the industry where he just wasted lots of money from not knowing how to navigate it, right? So I think that the value is easy to see from most people's perspective just by throwing the big numbers. Knowing how to navigate it is different, and that's one of the key points for Flare.
Hell yeah. Rick Fox, a North Carolina Tar Heels legend, not a great businessman. So learning it here first. Big Tar Heel fan. So I have to, again, you guys are hitting all my favorite teams. But no, I guess
Tar Heels.
There you go. Disco agrees. But I guess this kind of leads me to my next question is, okay, so you're starting a brand, which means you guys have to go out and recruit a team, right? What's that? Because again, you don't want to end up like, I think the Redskins are like top 5 most profitable branded franchises in the NFL, but they are also one of the worst franchises in the NFL. You guys don't want to be that, right? You don't want to be
never
in the playoffs. So how is that process going for you guys? How are you guys trying to recruit that? And do the fans, do the holders have any say so in who signs with who or anything like that? So can you kind of give us a little bit of breakdown there?
Sure. So 2 parts. So where we're going with getting that comes from my expertise. As I said, thankfully, and I hope, again, that doesn't make me sound too cocky, but I was really good at my job, and not only on the competition, on the branding, but I know everyone, and the best teams in the world, they're my friends. They're the people that I live with. So I think that the traditional models that work in esports is new. And like traditional sports, a lot of organizations bleed. And normally, if you're bleeding money to have an expansion, that's good, but you can't bleed just for the sake of bleeding, saying it's an expansion phase that never ends. The brands that have gotten it right are the Phases, the 100 Thieves, the Louds, which they use this influencer side. They don't go into every game. It's about going into the correct games and making waves and coming in big with big teams that will be there. And these celebrity athletes that are winning will validate your entire brand as winners. So that's the structure of what we're going for. The talks are already there. I can't, even though you're not an esports guy, I can't name the team that we have talked to many teams. I have talked to many players. I know where the contracts are, where it go. And there's one opportunity on the table right now that we're trying and going to act on. That's why we're going traditional VC route. And if I get this done, I already come into the world with top 15 to 10 team, and one that has the potential for long-term as they are young, but they also are one of the most profitable brands in the world, self-sustaining, revenue generating from the start. And it comes with one of the top 3 influencers in Valorant to kick off, and just that's a kickoff stage for Flare. It's already coming with both feet through the door in terms of who they are. In terms of the direction of what the holder can do, they will have a say in many things. Unfortunately, player direction is something that needs to be streamlined if we're very direct, right? You have to use the expertise of the people there to actually get a team that's competitive, that is sustainable in terms of brand, of hiring. You have to be able to streamline these decisions because most of the time it's reactive to market. If you know that some team is imploding, you go in there and you snipe up that player. That's how it works in sports. And so for that direction is a little bit hard. What the organization holders can have a say in is the direction of influencers, what games we want to be in, how we want to be portraying them, the jersey that we will do, who we will be sponsored by, what kind of activations we do. So there's a lot of say, But I already like to make it clear that I think that esports direction, it's up in the air to maybe be changed in the future. But at least initially, when you're trying to do this expansion of the brand so that you don't bleed and make wrong moves where the pennies still count every bit as much, it will be more streamlined.
And
yeah, and I think
the one thing we keep trying to talk over each other.
I love it because I've been in these things where, there'll be 8 people in here and no one wants to talk. And the fact that you guys have been like interrupting each other, not just to like say something, is very, very like bullish to me because you all have answers for everything. So it's very well appreciated. Trust me.
I think, well, this is props to you, right, for asking genuinely really good questions that, I'm excited to answer, right? You're the first person to have asked the last 3 questions you've said, and we've been on dozens of AMAs at this point, so props to you. But yeah, I think one of the main differentiators we have is that we're coming in with, using your own words, an esports legend who has done this dozens of times, building up teams, taking them to really high positions. But the one thing I'd really like to emphasize is that up until very recently, FaZe did not have a good team in any game. And they were really, really bad, actually. But they always remained profitable, or at least they always had the best branding. So even if a team is bad, like you might see this as, there's an inherent risk that the team is not going to perform well and, the branding is going to go bad. That's not necessarily always the case. Ankit, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of covered what I was going to say, right? Like, I think on the esports side, right, which is really the validator of the brand is how we look at it, right? That's not the money-making side. It's the validator. We don't have, like, we arguably have in Zeus probably the number 1 or number 2, like, most successful coach, general manager in history on our team. And so, like, just having that sort of as an asset, I think it probably hopefully speaks for itself, because literally, like, almost every team he's been on, he's taken to the number 1 and number 2 spot in the world in the last 7 years that he's been part of. And so, like, and a lot of that has to do with obviously where it was as an industry and whatnot. But I think we're pretty well positioned on that front. And as mentioned, we don't need to necessarily be the best, even though we want to be the best, as long as we're kind of building that influencer brand side, right? That's really, really the key to the business model.
That's awesome. And no, it's not, again, nice to hear that you guys all have answers to these questions too. And it's not just kind of a one-sided conversation, which happens a lot. But one thing that I kind of am curious about is, so, obviously, you guys are trying to establish a brand here. We're trying to start the team. We're trying to do all this. How far out are we here? I mean, is this something that will happen in the coming weeks, coming months? Because the other question I had is when will people be able to mint these passes to have access to this too?
All right, that's one of the first easy questions that you do. Everything that we do has already been in the works, so everything is for the very near immediate future. Our mint pass, even though not released yet to the public, we have started releasing this week that we will be minting in mid-September. So we're talking 2-3 weeks out now for our mint of the pass. As for the teams, well, they rely on not the mint, but the VC conversations in parallel, but you can expect something in the weeks following it or almost immediate future after it. We know that to keep focus on the brand, to keep floor prices going from the NFT side, to keep everything going, you have to keep the eyes on you. And there's no better way to do it than almost immediately after mint to bring that attention right in to hype that up,
Right. So just to reiterate, on the team side, right, which I think a lot of people would think is, well, how long would it take to get a team on board? We right now basically have, as mentioned, a top 10, top 15 team where, like, there's certain things that happened and they're sort of on the market, and Zeus just happens to be like best friends with all of them, and they're willing to take this jump with us if we raise the money, basically. And so that's very, very, very near term, right? And that's going to be the biggest jumper and boost of this brand, because that team comes with millions of followers themselves, because that's kind of how this industry is built, not to mention kind of the super influencers we've already been talking to. And again, we just think like that's ideally that's going to be like within sort of a month or 2 months, like from now, not even like from mint. So like that's kind of the goal here.
All right, that's like a realistic timeline too. Like, there's so many. The interest level and attention span of people here in the industry is so small. But it also seems like a benefit to you guys is that you're maybe not necessarily targeting people in the industry as much as you are targeting people who are genuine hobbyists and enthusiasts for, esports. Would you say that? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you said that it's funny because like we always like say this, but we honestly like, while we're very focused on floor prices because the community cares about it, like whatever happens to floor prices does not really impact our project that much, just because like we already know that we have these Web2 revenue sources. We know that we can kind of go down this Web2 already proven track. This Web3 side, as we said, we think is going to be a huge value add in the medium to long term, even though we're kind of in a bear market now. And so for us, right, like all the things that we do, we just see as very accretive to the brand, which at the end of the day is going to be accretive to Web3. But at the end of the day, like it really doesn't matter like what happens to the floor price, because in the medium to long term, the different utilities I described, like it's literally going to be like, well, if you guys think the floor price is 0.0 whatever, we're still going to sweep the floor at this floor price with $1 million, and that's that, and then that's fundamental value, from a sponsorship or whatever, right? And so in the medium to long term, like it's kind of irrelevant. Like if you do it right, you have the hype, obviously, which is what most NFT communities have relied on. But if you do it really right, you are also supported by cash flow, as I mentioned, and we know that we have the cash flow sources to support it, even without kind of the hype or no hype, right? Which we think is the right way and the more sustainable way to go in the medium to long term.
Yeah, and to that point, it's like, why do projects really care about floor price and volume? It's because royalty fees exist. Yep. Well, we're not living off of royalty fees. In fact, we don't really incorporate them into our business model whatsoever. It's kind of just like, oh, this is icing. Like, maybe we'll just give it away, or right. Like to us, it's so irrelevant because what we're doing generates outside money. I know a lot of projects kind of, you're like, oh yeah, these royalties, they're going to go here or here or here. We don't even allocate them because relative to the amount of money we're going to be bringing in by other sources that are not in crypto, or rather, other revenue streams altogether.
That. If this somehow becomes like a Bored Ape, then it's real money. And like, then you have to figure out how to allocate it. But like for most projects, like it's kind of relatively small relative to
all of our models and all of our like projections are not including royalties whatsoever. So kind of what Battle was saying, the floor price is kind of irrelevant to us because we're going to be rewarding our holders with the same stuff anyway. So.
Well, and I was going to say, you mentioned, the only reason that people care about floor price is royalties, but at the same time, I think there is some kind of innate want and feel to deliver to the community. Hey, you bought this at $500. I'm just throwing that out there as a random number, so no one please tie that down to the project. But you mentioned this at $500, and if you would have not mint it and waited, a week, you would have been able to get it for $150. I feel like there is that ability to deliver on that as well.
Definitely.
Oh, for sure.
I think that, not to be misconstrued, I think it's counterintuitive in how we say it, but the truth is floor prices go up for those that don't focus on floor price. If you are focused on floor price, you're focusing on the wrong experiences for the user, right? When you should be delivering things to the community and things that bring hype and bring genuine feel good to the experience, and by consequence the floor price goes up and the investment goes up. As we said, we will have ways to prop up the floor price from the outside source of revenues, from many different ways, from the eyes being brought in and things like that. But don't take us the wrong way when we say we are not focused on the floor price, because we are focused on having a sustainable business that grows, and that will make the floor price grow by consequence, but not as a direct method of, oh my God, we just need to do the floor price raise by whatever means. No, we need to have a sustainable business by whatever means, and that by consequence gets floors going.
Yeah, I think I just saw a quote from Gordon Goner. I think it was on a podcast he was on recently, where it was like, someone was asking him how to raise their project's floor price or whatever, and he's like, dude, like the best way to raise your floor price is go get high in the woods on some mushrooms, come back to it after a week, and then like think of something cool to actually build with your project, right? So a lot of what we're saying is we're like, we don't really care about the floor price. That doesn't mean it's not going to go up, or that doesn't mean it's not a lucrative investment for investors. It just means we're caring more about what's actually going to impact it or what's actually going to add value rather than the minute things of, oh, I need to really pump hype right now to artificially raise the price. Like, that's not what we're focused on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, you guys, again, you're mentioning, there are things to keep people excited about other than just, hey, this is a financial investment kind of vehicle. Obviously, again, people who are excited to be a part of the team building here, or the brand building and things like that, definitely an incentive there. My question is, let's say, you guys are, and I have no belief to think you wouldn't be. Let's say you're very successful at this, right? And from a Web 2 standpoint, you guys are able to, make a franchise. You're able to build a brand. It's very successful. How do you guys keep yourselves honest into delivering some of these early investors from the Web 3 space? So what's keeping you guys from abandoning the NFT part of it? Years down the road.
I love your questions. No joke, and it's not just blowing smoke up your ass, but you touch the right areas and things that we thought about. So if you're talking long term, like 10 years, something like that. One, for me, it goes down to the love of the game. This is my life. I've put 22 years into it, and I always describe this project as the sum of my passions, right? It's esports, it's lifestyle, it's fashion. I love clothing, I love music, I love these events. But from an investor perspective, we've already developed in our tokenomics. What's the name of it, Ryan? You put it there. We have a cliff for our vesting. So basically, we cannot withdraw our capital from this for 5 years, like long term. There's a cliff for 2 years where we start and things like that. But for at least 5 years, you guys get the three of us 100%. And I'm telling you, like this, you have on a more direct level, you have to trust the team that you're going with. We plan to do this for life, because we love it and what we want to do. You never know the future. So we're able to guarantee 5 years, which is something that I think is kind of unseen in the NFT space, where you guarantee that you're not withdrawing money, you're not withdrawing your quotas or whatever it is from the company, so that you can check out and just have that easy cash grab. But from a long-term perspective, again, the beauty of Web3 from me coming from esports is this. Esports I helped build. This is the culture that I love. It's everything that I loved. And I saw it got taken over by money. And that's kind of like the blunt directness of it. And it's not cool for someone who has helped build and shape what the industry has become to see that. And what I see in Web3 is the opportunity to do something cool with the values and with the lifestyle that we love and the things the vision for ourselves that we want to be portrayed to the world as. So as long as that continues and it isn't like completely rotten to the core, which we are nowhere near, we're still in such an early days, there will always be an incentive, because this is a place where at the end of the day, a community is a hive of like-minded people with the same goals, passions, loves, and things like that. So it's kind of crazy. Who wouldn't want to do something that they love? Like, everyone hates a 9-to-5 job, or at least most people hate that lifestyle. They wish they could do something different. Once you have a chance, you're going to jump out. That's just crazy, to me.
I think to answer maybe your question a little bit more directly, also is just around what would just make us do just the Web 2 and not the Web 3 part. I mean, like, I guess part of it is that you have to know that, like, Wilton's docs, 50-person team, like almost everyone is doxed out there. So it's not like we're going to rug any of the money just because of what it is. And I think part of it is you have to believe in the long-term value of this space. I mean, there is a certain outcome 5 years from now where all of this was just completely hyped and everything in the NFT world just goes to zero. And that's completely possible. We think that if you add fundamental cash flows and values and things like that, that's not going to be the case. And that's where things need to go. And that's why some of the utilities we've been mentioning have been very much so cash flow driven, as well as kind of the hype driven side. There's definitely going to be a hype driven relevancy there as well. And part of that is being at the cutting edge and operating at the cutting edge, which is sort of what this project is in terms of how we're thinking about how it ties into more traditional structures and things like that. But there is that outcome, right? But I don't think it's very probable of it going to zero. I mean, like if everything goes to zero, everything goes to zero, right? We're still gonna
stay with kind of the utilities that we said, unless like it just becomes completely unfeasible from some certain standpoint. But I mean, like outside of that, I don't really see a way where we don't live up to our commitments. And part of it is trust, right? Part of it's kind of contract law. I mean, that's what legal aid is. We are kind of operating. We will be operating under kind of the legality of kind of the U.S. government, right, in the United States, and people will be doxxed. So there will be that recourse which exists in terms of that. But I mean, I don't know, like there is obviously, but the only way I see that happening is if the entire space completely goes to zero, right, 5 years from now, and like that's not something that you can kind of 0 to 1 kind of predict or go around. But outside of that, and even then, we'd probably still honor our utilities. I don't really know like what situation that would be.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think you guys did a great job answering that question. And again, if everything goes to zero at the very end of the day, I mean, at least, your all's path doesn't go to zero because you guys are still offering that utility for sure. So that makes a lot of sense. So, and I'm so sorry. I guarantee it's so much louder in my ear than it is yours.
It's all good, dude.
So give me 1 second. Let me beat him off with this stick. My usual go-to here is, okay, we got 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left. Can we, ask questions from the audience? Doesn't seem like the audience has any questions here in the guest question chat. So I wanted to see if we can maybe end this on maybe something that we didn't talk about, maybe something that we kind of brushed over that you'd really like to emphasize for people listening to this later on and people who have stayed throughout the chat to kind of walk away saying, oh, hey, I didn't realize that was part of this.
It was the first time we've been silent. I kind of just I assumed you'd take it. I'll go. Fuck it.
No, go. Give me time to think, because I'm sure there's things we didn't touch on, but it is a miracle to catch us silent.
Yeah, I know.
It's always a good thing when we've had a whole hour-long conversation and we've not ran out of a conversation or topic. So don't worry about that. I'm going to mess up now.
No problem. So the one thing I would say is I don't want anyone from this talk thinking that this is an esports organization exclusively. The one thing I would say is this is more of a media company than it is an esports company. The end goal of this is we onboard esports teams for the sole purpose of validating the brand. That brand then creates a number of influencers, which attract a ton of sponsorship money. That's the business model as a whole. The esports is just one way that we see to get there in a really, really fast way, because sponsorship money is just flooding the space. So that's the one takeaway I'd really give. I'm not sure if anyone wants to kind of add to that or has their own.
Yeah, I mean, just to that point, I would just, I would just say, right, like that's what makes this so attractive also from a crypto standpoint, just because the direct to community type interactions that we see in the space daily, not to mention all the on-chain things you can do, just makes it like such a great synergy in terms of kind of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. And like how this model, like 5 years from now, right, like how to be like, what's a success? A success is that we've built a very successful organization, right? I see all of our NFT communities, I use this analogy, as basically like companies in a way, or like nation states or whatever you want to call it, where we're trading into kind of the state, right? And the way you trade into the state is like, what are you offering of value to people outside of your community? Otherwise, your stores of value is just like whatever the community thinks. And another way to think about that is really floor price, right? Like, what are people willing to pay to be part of this community? And why would someone want to play part of this community? Because that community is offering something of value to the rest of the world, and people are willing to pay for either the floor, or they're willing to pay that community revenue or whatever not. For us, right, the end goal is that we have so many sponsors like willing to pay to be part of our community, and that enriches kind of everyone, right, financially, if that's what you're into, but also if you like are really into like kind of the esports side or the branding or the media side, whatever, right? Because our goal with this is to be, again, like our inspirations are things like FaZe Clan, whose Snoop Dogg is on their board, right? Like you have Lil Nas like with 100 Thieves, and like, or Zed that did something with 100 Thieves, right? Like it's all these musicians, influencers, whatever, that are kind of part of this new space. It's like a new sort of I don't know, it's almost called like Gen Z marketing, or like influencer type marketing, right? And this is just like part of it. And so you can have like whatever piece you want. There could be like this financial piece of like this vision of what like we think NFT communities and crypto can look like in a sustainable way. That can be what we want of it, right? Or you can maybe just love the esports side and love the team and that performs at a high level, right? Or you might love all the events and the influencers outside of esports that are part of our collection and group, right? And that could be why you're part of it, right? Or as I mentioned, right, like just like you might want to invest in Amazon stock, and you don't give a fuck about Amazon as a company, but you know it's going to go up by 50%, right? Because it's an investment. That's another reason you might want to invest in us, right? Whether it's a mint pass now or in the future. But yeah, I just say that like what we're trying to build is very complex. It's a vision, I think, of what we think Web3 can look like in a way that's sustainable. But there's a piece of it for like every single person. It's not just the crypto person. It's not just the esports person. It's not just the person who loves fashion, right? It's whatever piece you want to take of it.
Nice. I mean, agree with everything that they've said. I think it's hard to find something that we haven't touched on, but what I leave here is I hope that the takeaway is why this is the perfect fit for the industry. And to us, it's esport is the most crypto adjacent community, right? And ready to be on board into Web3. I hope we did a good enough job of explaining what myself and my co-founders, why we are some of the more successful name in esports, crypto, and business, and with our advisors, everything like that. It is an esports brand at its core, but it's not just for esports, as Ryan is saying. There's merch, there's lifestyle, there's community events, there's lifestyle experiences, and there's the crypto side. All of these are amazing. I encourage you to very soon take a look at our free claim collection. We will be releasing the art for it within the coming week. I will say 7 days is the period of time, and I hope you like it. Ankit described it as gaming centered, but as I mentioned, it's the sum of all of our passions. So it's gaming, it's anime, it's fashion, lifestyle, it's music, it's movies. There's a reference for anyone that's liked some kind of pop culture or culture in life. And we had a 20 plus person artistry team led by Daniel, who is my friend that worked under Kojima, one of the famous game developers. It was super done in quality with attention to detail because we wanted to over deliver and have something that you guys would like. And as soon as it's out, I hope you're as enthusiastic about it as I am. And the last question that's always on my mind is like, kind of why now? Well, I hope that the sum of all of our explanations on the team of us building through this bear market, how much we've invested, how much we believe in it, and how we're here for the long term is enough. I think that the esports market and the influencer market is at a unique place that it will never be again, where if we don't get in on this, us for Flare as a business and maybe you as an investor, it might be a thing that the boat has sailed and it's gotten out of reach, right? It becomes unattainable. So I do encourage you, check out our socials, check out our website, not only see the quality, but read into it. We want people in our community to be invested and to do their research and to actually look into the project. We say that because we know as we like to put it, there's meat on the bone. We have sustenance to our things, and that's it for me. I just hope you all check it out. I appreciate the time. I appreciate all of you that stuck around for all this time. And yeah, great to be here.
Beautiful. No,
Also, try to find the Easter eggs in the website. That's a good challenge I always give everyone. But sorry about that.
You're fine. And I will try to look for it. I did watch the trailer, and nothing more has gotten me more pumped in like this year than that trailer. Holy shit! If you know, you know. So go to their website, check out that trailer to get pumped too. Even if you're just having a bad day, nothing NFT related whatsoever. If you're having a bad day and you need some motivation, it's a good one. But I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, it's been a great conversation. Love what you guys are trying to accomplish, what you guys are doing, and it seems like there's not many teams out there who could be more equipped to do it than you guys. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you for everyone listening to this later on. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up and call it a good night. So everyone take care.
Have a good night, man. Have a good night, Ryan. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
Let's go Eagles.
Okay. Peace out, guys.
Later.